right, man. Turning out to be a good new year.
It's a great new year. It's January 10th, 2023. Welcome, everybody. You listen to Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 649.
649, and the SEC
reigns supreme.
Its dominance.
I thought it was fascinating how many people got so caught up in the fact that TCU beat a woefully overrated Michigan team. And like, I think they got a chance. And they picked them. And I told my neighbor who's an Ohio State alum, I said, Georgia's going to win by 50. Like, they're totally outclassed. Totally. And they showed it. It was the most boring national championship game. I think I watched the first two quarters and I was like, it went exactly how I thought it would go. But it's nice to see a new powerhouse reign over Alabama. I'm sure they'll be predicted number one next year. Nothing like having them in our conference too, as a Tennessee fan. But we hope you all had, unless you're a TCU fan, had a wonderful start to the week and a start to the new year. And if you're on the wagon or have already fallen off the wagon, like a lot of people, we hope you're enjoying the start and still optimistic and energized for a great new year. If it's your first time tuning in, welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. I know you have quite a lot of options in the Triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general. I was Ray Babs. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I, as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. We also talk frequently about what our own athletes are going through. Mike and I both work with a very wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner-level triathletes looking at the very first 5K or sprint, all the way up through elite-level amateurs trying to get back to the World Championships, and everyone in between from all over the globe. Regardless of your endurance endeavor, we've got you covered. And we'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also utilize our very lively Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Please answer one simple question. We'll let you right in. Awesome community, fantastic people, and pretty solid resource in a very confusing sport, and honestly, just confusing times with how big of a platform everyone has now to dish out information. It can be confusing. Let's just be honest about it. So there's a lot of great people in there willing to give you their own personal objective advice on their experiences and hopefully lead you down the right path to avoid some of the same obstacles we've all had, Mike and I included. We'll go in there about once a month and do a Q&A, take the pulse of the people and the pulse of the community, and answer as many questions as we can live on the podcast. But that's it. We don't do sponsors. We don't do ads. We do have an agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't do ads, but management has made me come across here and say that one of the best ways you can support the podcast, if you've had enjoyment from it and learned some things or whatever, is to buy some gear. And everybody can buy our gear. It's not just the team or whatever. And so there's we have a store on our website, and you can check that out. We're going to be getting some more stuff soon too, so everybody can be excited about that. So that's a really great way to support the cast. You know, we don't have ads, and we've been trying to think, well, I know a lot of people like to support the cast, but how can they do it? And I think that is really what we're coming back to a lot of times. That, and obviously connecting with us for coaching and things like that. But if you're not into that, go to the website and get some cool gear, because there's plenty of it hanging out here in my mom's basement.
Yeah, that's the least you can do. Buy a little bit of gear, leave us a solid review. Yeah, that's it. We don't ask too much. But yeah, that's a great way to support. We also have training camps. Again, if you're not looking into coaching, I did misquote last week because there was a worried person. We still have a few slots left in our June. Our most popular camp that we have is our June camp in Nashville. We have a couple slots left for that. We've got one slot left for our Madison camp in August. That's for 70.3 all the way up through full distance. We've got 6 or 7 slots left for our Texas camp. Yeah, if you're interested, hop in. If you've never been to a camp before, check them out. It's something that, I think we do a lot of things, pretty solidly, but I think that's one of the things we do the best. I know since we started doing camps, we've had over 700 different people register for camps. So they're a great time. People probably come for C26, but they leave with best friends and a really awesome experience. So check those out, and have a good time. Enjoy yourself. But yeah, it's an exciting year. It's still early. I had what I would think is a solid topic for today, but before I did that, how are you feeling to start the new year? And are you energized, about what's coming up?
Dude, I am on fire.
Wow.
I'm on fire. I've been consistent since the new year. I mean, sounds silly, but actually I can feel some good momentum brewing. I've been sticking to activity on the daily, quite a bit of it, and feeling good about it, really.
I mean, I've known you for a very long time.
I know. This takes us back to 2013 almost, I think.
Yeah. Dude, this is, I don't know that I've ever, besides that year, the very first year that we met, I don't know that I've ever heard you talk about being on fire first week of January. Or even doing anything. This is
ever,
period, ever. But I'm gonna say, I like it. I dig it. And what I appreciate about it is that it's really not. While it might be it might differ from your past, approach to the seaon. You're not reinventing the wheel. No. Right. You're not trying to crush 20-hour weeks trying to make up for lost time. You're not trying to, PR at Ironman Wisconsin in January. You're just doing a little bit. But I honestly think, and this is something we've talked about on a lot of podcasts recently, is about creating habits, because habits stick. And the better habits you have, the easier they are to stick. Right. And the easier it is to not cave and not give in to excuses. And so I applaud you for that, man. I'm very, very proud of you. And it sounds to me like you're doing it in a very sustainable, energizing way.
Yeah. And I've been challenged, believe me.
I bet you have.
I went down to Illinois this weekend. I was in Peoria. My buddy won 2 tickets to the Illinois-Wisconsin game, and we left early Saturday morning. Of course, I'm still not grooving on the morning workouts, but I'm getting them in. But anyway, we went to the game in Champaign, about an hour and a half drive, came back about darkness, and I hadn't gotten a workout in. I went out in the dark and ran after the game, and then we went out to dinner, and I came back and got on the bike after dinner on a Saturday night. So there you have it, buddy.
This is all very weird to me and very uncomfortable. I don't really, thank goodness we aren't back at the hub anymore, because I would be feeling shame every day I went to the office. Just like you used to feel when you're in a groove. I'd walk into the hub, you'd be sweating out, or I'd see a towel or a little bit of water on the endless pool wall, and I'm like, damn it, he's been back here again. He came in at nighttime, he got to swim in. Or like you would come in when I was in my biggest groove, and you'd be like, damn it, there he is on the bike again, or he's already been in, or I'm already off and showered. I would feel shame about how much of a groove. But now with the distance, I feel nothing but support, nothing but love. But it's great to see you in that. And honestly, it's a great lesson, right, for everyone. I think to find something sustainable and to gravitate towards that. So many people to begin the year, and honestly to plan the season, right? We have our deadline for, not really a deadline. It kind of is. If you're an athlete of ours, it's deadline to put in their race calendars, even if they're not racing, or they, put in what is people way overcommit and then figure out that they overcommitted, and then they kind of waffle and end up hating what they committed to. And you're doing a extremely intelligent, thing by making things manageable, even in 30-minute increments. And I think it's important. One of the things we talked about before on the podcast was energy, right? And one of the big topics I wanted to have today was about movement and energy, which might seem like very, very broad topics, but as usual, that's kind of what we do. But I was talking about this when last Friday we did our first Zoom call for the athletes that are doing our race plans, and I was talking about periodization, and a lot of times people talk about periodization and they talk about, you know, base, build, and race specific. You know, base is aerobic work and this and this and this, and we call it, you know, the skill phase. And then the more I honestly, but, you know, which is, you know, about economy and efficiency and creating, you know, ways to be, you know, faster. And then as I got to explaining it, I said, you know, a really simplistic way to look at it is to look at it as this is your movement phase, right? How do you move in the water? How do you move on the bike, right? How do you move when you run? Obviously, you know, running and swimming being the most demanding in the movement department, right? They require the highest skill level of, you know, overall mechanics, right? Because it's total body. Swimming, you can get away with not having the best mechanics and not get hurt because it's not load bearing, but should be significantly slower. And running, you can have really, really, really bad mechanics and you might get hurt, right? Cycling, a little bit more simplified because it's just your lower half of your body, but there's skill there to be done. And I really honestly, you know, wish I had always called it that. It was like the movement period, is working on moving better. And that's kind of where I segue into energy. Right. And we talked about that before the cast, like doing things that give us energy, right? Or doing things that suck energy away from us. And it was kind of a funny segue from the two athlete calls I had before this. I talked a lot about energy. One specific athlete who before we worked together had a bunch of running injuries. And I just simply say, no, I said, I refuse to believe that your best days are behind you. I just refuse. Whether they are or not, I don't know, right? But I refuse to believe your best days are behind you. And that all comes down to, you know, you're running because of your injury history and surgery and stuff like that. And I said, and she was asking about ways to improve and things to be more mindful of. And anyway, I got to talking about, she would go really, really, this is an athlete that that has, you know, done run walks and had, you know, issues. And she would occasionally go out on a Saturday with the boys and just go smash it. Right. And I tell her, I said, that's not bad. Right. It's not anything that really hurts you, but also doesn't really help you on the bike. But where it might hurt you is the next day, not from just a fatigue standpoint, but from a movement standpoint. So for a person who already doesn't necessarily move that well when they run, when you begin your run, if you're at an energy deficit, then you're going to move better for a shorter period of time, requiring you to walk sooner, right? Same thing goes with swimming. You know, it's about economy. You can see somebody hopping in the pool and you can see they literally look like they're going super slow stroke rate, but they're long and strong. And you're like, man, they're going really slow. And they're doing like 110s. And you look at the lane next to you and it looks like someone tossed a blindfolded Tasmanian devil in the deep end and they're trying to make their way to the end. And they're thrashing, they're high turnover, they're kicking so hard, you know, and they're going nowhere. It's about movement, right? And efficiency, because the better you move, right, the less energy required. You take two athletes that run 9-minute miles. If one moves better, then their energy required to produce a 9-minute mile is less, right? Same can be said for an athlete in the pool. I think what swims a 130. If you've got a lot better form and you move better, you're more efficient. Well, guess what? The other person who might not move better but's trying a lot harder to be 130s. Guess what? Energy lower. So when you look at long distance racing and the demands, right? We always talk about energy from the time you get in the water, you begin to use energy, always, right? And you will always be using energy. It's just about how much you use and when you use it, and then how quickly you will run out of it. And so in this time of year, and then I think just more specifically for all three sports, is to always be mindful of how you move and the time you are dedicating to moving correctly, or how much time you spend moving incorrectly. And that is something that you see specifically in two of the disciplines, swimming and swimming and running. When athletes swim, we kind of have a standing rule. Once your form falls apart, either one, grab the pull buoy, right? So you can continue to repeat and have good form, or stop, right? And then running, you especially see this in athletes and in programs that want woefully undertrained and poor moving and terrible chassised athletes to do these 17, 18, 20-mile runs where all you're doing is practicing terrible movement patterns requiring high energy to go slower over a period of time. But the goal is to maximize movement, to have your best level of efficiency to use less energy. And that's endurance sports. And so I think it's an excellent topic for today, obviously, because I spent 35 minutes talking about it. But that is something that I think a lot of athletes overlook when they put so much effort on speed. Don't forget, it's also about the contributions towards that speed that have a huge requirement on your body, and what are you doing to lessen the requirement to either equal or create greater performance and faster gains?
I am constantly blown away by how fast fluid people are. And what you're saying is so resonates with me so deeply. I think movement and that's exactly what I've been doing lately. And it's probably just subconscious and it's partially conscious, I guess, but just doing things. And like you're saying, a lot of times athletes will be like, all right, what are we doing right now in January? What's our thing? And I'm like, well, it's movement and it's form and it's skill and getting better, but without, really seeing maybe the speed or the times that you want to see. And for example, I've always been about the transitions in life and stuff like that. When you wake up in the morning, I don't know about you, but when I wake up, I'm like, there's no way I can go work. I mean, you're just stiff or I am.
I'm old too. I feel you.
Okay, so you feel it. All right. I'm sometimes I feel like I'm in my own little world of weirdness, but it's just so weird. I'm like, I'm not, working out right now. And then, 30 minutes later, if I don't do anything stupid, I'm like, oh, I feel pretty good, or whatever. And all these transitions. And so I'm always big on moving into workouts in the correct manner. And lately I've been kind of doing, if I have a run and I'll get on, I've been doing treadmill. I like doing treadmill at this time because it sort of builds in good habits for me. I feel like, at least because normally when I'm outside, I usually run too hard. I tend to do that. And then I can't really work on shit as much as I probably should, but I can control the environment more. So I like that. And I know that's another thing that probably blows your mind, but you saw part of that at the hub when we were down there. I started to like the treadmill for that reason. So a lot of times I'll get on the elliptical or something for 20 minutes and just kind of warm it up in get my legs in a way without the pounding. And then I'll get on the treadmill and I'll start doing, it's almost like a tempo zone 2 workout or something like that, where I'm not going super hard, but I'm going up and down, but I'm really focusing on my turnover. So I'm trying to keep my turnover the same, whether or not the speed is 5 or it's 6.5. And it's a really interesting experiment. And I think it really kind of comes back to what you're talking about. Everyone talks about how, I've heard before, if you want to run correctly, just focus on pulling your heels to your butt, and it kind of starts taking care of the rest of the shit, naturally. And I kind of feel like focusing on, at least for me, the turnover on a treadmill, even if I'm going slower or faster, if I'm keeping my cadence high, that it sort of makes me a better runner. And you can kind of when you go up and down like that, you can really especially when you're going faster and you're relaxing and then you slow it down and you still have the same turnover. It's an interesting feeling because it just feels easier. And I'm like, okay, there's something in there, right? There's something in there. It's about balance and, picking your feet up and not slamming them down. And, because if you talk about, I'd be interested to see what runners turnover are in at the end of an Ironman, what the cadence there is.
The higher end athletes keep that 180, 185 cadence towards the end, and there's two arguments there. That's because they're going so fast. because the faster you go, right, the higher your cadence is. That's just natural, right? You want to go faster, move your legs faster. And same thing in cycling. You can big gear all the way, but if you really want to top it out, right, your RPMs go way up over 100, right? You just have to move faster. They go, they're going fast. That's why. Why do you think they're still going faster?
Yeah,
because they didn't use the same energy. Like, going back and looking at watching Gustav Eden, Annie Hogg, Dan Lorang, Rennie, all Patrick Lang, like those athletes, you see them run and you're like, it looks effortless but it's not, right? They're huffing, they're puffing, but to them it looks effortless because they're so damn efficient, right? Looking at athletes in the pool, or Lucy Charles Barkley when she swims, they're so insanely efficient because smooth looks slow, but it's not, it's fast. Forced looks fast, but it's slow. And that's such a thing we had to work on so much at the hub when people got in the pool, was like, swimming is almost the reverse, right? A lot of times the harder you try, the slower you get. And that's like going back to what you're talking about, run wise. And that's like been a gigantic, not an overhaul, but a huge change we've had in kind of our programming this year. Is we've always kind of been a traditionally, we're not low volume. I think we are lower than most people's run volume that you see in training plans, or or coaches that have 20, 25 mile runs, just doing all these crazy. We're lower than that. But even this year, we for most athletes, or a lot of athletes, we might go even lower. But it's not that we're spending less time running, is that we're going to spend just as much, maybe even more time focusing on running. But instead of 100% of running, we might focus 90% of that time on running, and then the other 10% or 15% or 20%, depending on the person, on how they move when they run. You said you liked, I think you said you liked butt kicks or something like that a minute ago.
Yeah.
In some of our run workouts now, we have butt kicks, strides, high knees, like within the course of the workout. Not for a couple of reasons. One is just it reminds you how you're supposed to run. A lot of us, so many things we do because of the demands of life and where our brain goes is we start out with good intentions, right? Like you start out focusing on, you hop in the pool, you're going to I'm going to work on my catch today.
Right.
And I'm going to swim 2,000 straight. Well, after about 200 yards, you totally lose that train of thought. And then you go off to like, all right, well, the grocery list, and I got this to work. I got to pick up the kids, and I got to take my dog to the vet next week. And then all of a sudden, you get done and you're like, well, shit, I forgot what I was focusing on. Right. Yeah. So the 200 meters you focused on, you didn't really change anything because you spent more time not focusing than focusing. And so one of the reasons I've kind of implemented these things within running specifically is because we just kind of doze off, right? But it's to keep the intent. And we've had a ton of athletes the last week as they've done these program workouts, but man, like I really, really, really like these because I can feel myself running, being more aware, right, of when I run and how I run versus just doing it to do it. And then two, I feel faster after having done the kicks, the high knees, and the strides, because I see and feel what it's like when you put the combo together and how to run right. And then again, you might not be able to hold it for forever, right? Just like in swimming, you know good form. It just breaks down over time, right? So the goal is to continuously build up to where it becomes your natural form, right? So even if you're doing 834s, and let's say you might not get significantly faster, but hopefully you do get faster. If you go from 834, that requires, X amount of energy, or kilocalories an hour, it goes down from that, right? So that's a huge benefit. But swimming is the difficult piece, right? Because a lot of times you hop in and you're doing drill. Well, this drill in the pool is going to make me faster. It's going to make me do this. Well, the unique piece about the pool and why I hate specific isolated drills like fingertip drag or high elbow catch out of the water, or other drills that are so isolated, made for just the pool, is that when you have to know your space and you have to know where to move and how to place, right? In open water, that's so insanely important because it's moving. The water is moving, and so if the water is moving, guess what? You're moving. Right? You're not stationary. Your hips aren't perfectly centered like you want to have them in the pool. The water moves you. Guess what else moves you? The people move you. The people move, the waves move, the water moves. Everything moves, right? So you can't just try to place it at a specific spot, right? So when one of the things we've kind of changed in terms of programming this year is the level of intention, the level of the goal for the workout is more so to feel things, right? To feel what is, to what X, Y, and Z is supposed to feel like, and then do that, right? Because it doesn't matter what body of water you're in, downriver, stream, river, lake, ocean, pool, you know what water feels like. And if you can do that, then you can adapt to any kind of environment, right? Which is totally different in swimming when you do these isolated drills that don't, in fact, help you learn better mechanics. It just makes you better at drills. You have to swim and include them at the same time. There's zero sense in doing 800 yards of catch-up drill, right? Or 800 yards of another different kind of drill. They're just making you better at that drill. You have to incorporate it within the workout, or you're going to forget about it, because it's not going to allow, you don't have the fitness to maintain it for a longer period of time. So again, it takes effort and I think just a better understanding of how important energy is to everything that we do, and how easily we are zapped of energy, not just emotionally and mentally, but physically, right? When you see people at the end of an Ironman, they didn't forget how to run. They're all hunched over and barely moving, and they're leaning all the way to the right, and their arms not moving. It's like they didn't forget how to run, right? They're just so fatigued and tired, right, that they can't hold form any longer, right? So the point is to be fit, be fast, hold form, not to overextend runs to where you continuously practice very shitty movement patterns, increasing your likelihood for injury, right? Decreasing your chances of actually getting fitter, because you're just going to continue to slow and degrade over a long period of time, because the amount of adaptation some training plans have that they expect from an hour and a half to 2 hours in like a 13, 14-day span is ridiculous. Your body can't adapt that fast. So it's just, you're conquering these poor movement patterns, and you wonder why people get hurt, right? Or when they come to an Ironman, they don't know how to run fast. So again, like, especially if you're self-coached, make sure you're focusing on movement, right? And recruitment. I mean, all these things across all three disciplines are so very, very, very important to utilize the best that you have, because if not, then you're giving it away, right? It's like pumping up your front tire on your bike, to 95 psi, and then leaving your back one at 55. No matter how much power you're putting out, your speed's gonna be slower.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Did I catch you mid sip?
Yeah. I thought he's on a roll. I got shot here. By the way, you should see my drip today. Solid. Yeah, I'd like to, you said there's one thing you said in there, you're talking about swimming. I just want to ask you, because as I said, I kind of got into swimming last year. And one of the things that I learned was I went a long ways. I was taking breaks, though, but I wasn't doing tons of, like you said, 800s. I was doing 2s and 300s and things like that, and 100s. But a lot of time, what I started doing was I alternated paddles and no paddles a lot. And what that did, I mean, I want your opinion on this as a swimmer, because like I'm a marginally improving swimmer. I'm not a great swimmer, and I don't anticipate that I'll ever be a great swimmer, but I want to be a strong swimmer, and that's kind of what happened last year. And I felt like I got a little tickle of it, so I like it.
Got a little tickle of it, huh?
Yeah. So I swam a lot with paddles, but I did a lot of alternating. And for me, like the analogy I always made was like, it was like warming up with a donut on my baseball bat, and then, you can't swing with the donut on, so you got to be able to be used to the adjustment of how light it feels. And after swimming, but with paddles, to me, that really felt like it taught me really good habits of recruitment, because it's a weird thing, because paddles feel easier to me, and I don't know if that's how it's always supposed to feel, but for me it's easier. But it does, it gets my lats. It helps me focus really on my lats, and I start like having this I don't know how to say it, like sort of unified stroke. It brings me Like I'm not thinking about my breath as much. I feel like I have more control with paddles on, and I'm not like throwing my head all the way out of the water. It's just kind of rolling with my body naturally, and everything feels a lot better. But then when I take them off, it feels easier at first, but you start losing, like you're saying, the water moves and your arms start slipping, and you don't have quite as good of a grip on it. So like, I know you've always prescribed paddles and everything, but it's like back and forth. Do you see advantages of that? I mean, do you think about things like that, and do you recommend that, or how do you think?
I 100% recommend that. And it's an excellent question, right? I think a lot of times people use a tool and then have honestly like no earthly idea why they're using it in the first place. And that's like one of those big things that like even like one of the main sets I've got a lot of people doing right now is with that. It's alternating paddles and regular swimming. The preset, is paddle work. The main reason is so you can get a very, very, very good feel. Like I've got, or I'll alternate with the pull buoy, without, because one of the biggest things about the paddles that, a lot of people use them, they first off, they get paddles that are way, way, way too big. They can't hold form. They're just grossly oversized, typically men, but they do them because they go faster. They still have shitty form because they can't hold form with their big paddle because they're not strong or not using the right muscles. And they do it because it makes them feel easier. Well, the point is that you should swim that way to begin with. That makes it easier, and that's how you should swim, right? Because paddles are to create feel, right? And one of the other huge benefits for paddles, and that's why I love alternating, is because you apply a device, but a tool to help you get feel for the water, right? And then you remove it, you still have kind of that sensation, that proprioception of, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. So you move your hand, you move your wrist, you adjust your forearm, right? You get it higher to feel the same thing you just felt because you just felt it. You just had a paddle to help you, right? Same thing with, on the run, butt kicks, strides, high knees. That's how my legs are supposed to move, right? I'm supposed to engage these things. I'm supposed to drive forward. Then, their first little bit of running after that feels effortless because you're running well, not because you all of a sudden learn, because you just did a few things to help you, to show you how to do it. Same thing, right? Another huge thing that I love about paddles is not only does it help you, because one of the biggest areas of I call it suffering from athletes with, in the pool is that they can't work on something because they already feel like they can barely breathe to get to the end, right? So telling them to work on something while they're trying, it's like, tossing in a person who can barely swim in rough seas. You're like, all right, man, on your way back to me, if you make it back, really focus on high elbow into the water, really open up that armpit and get your elbow up and let me see. And they're like, no, I just want to get to you, right? I don't want to die right now. I have a zone 1 and a zone 5, and really nothing in between. The zone 1 is when I hop in the pool, and zone 5 is when I start swimming. So to ask somebody to work on that is really hard, right? And especially with athletes that don't have a feel for the water, they get through the water so quickly because they don't grab any. They grab zero. Like, if you see a lot of the high-end wetsuits and panels, like, a lot of them create these gridded extra fabric pieces on the form of their wetsuit because they want you to grab more water to be able to push more and move more. And with the goal of the paddle, and again, for me and how I prescribe it, especially if it's paddle and pull buoy, is it removes your legs, right? So you're not thrashing a kick, you're not using all this oxygen. And also the fact that you're having to push and pull, right, within your stroke a higher square inch, right, around your hand, you slow down your catch. Just by the mere fact that you now have a hand that's significantly larger, right? And so it slows you down, allowing you to focus more. And while you're also going slower and also you're not kicking a lot, guess what's also down? Your heart rate. You feel more aerobic. You're like, I can do this for longer. So now I can do this 200, 300 at a zone 2 pace. I can continue to work on building endurance while maintaining a good feel for the water. Now I'm going to remove the paddle, right? But I just did 200, 300, whatever it is with a paddle. And now I'm going to start again. Now I know what it's supposed to feel like, because I just did repetitively over and over and over again the motion I'm supposed to have with my paddle. And now I know where I'm supposed to feel it, right? Same thing with like a fist drill. You remove the fist, you remove the tactile and the touchiness of your hands. And now all you can do is feel, your forearm, which you're supposed to feel when you swim. Now you feel the pressure. So now you can move your hand, move your elbow. I'm like, I've got it, I don't got it. And make those decisions in real time to keep it. Now you might not be able to last a 300, but now you know. So it's a great way to teach, right, without being there, but also to allow for progress, and then showing them what it should feel like and then doing it. It's like any other coaching tool and device across all sports, right? It's like you go from T-ball to coach pitch to machine pitch to real pitch, right? And that's how it goes. Then you have bigger goals, smaller goals, right? Everything is to get you to do the right movement, right? But to learn the movement pattern, what's supposed to feel like, and then you adapt over time by repetitiveness, with consistency. Short answer is, yeah, that's great.
Great.
Great. Yeah. It's in all those things, right? Accelerations on the bike, right? Fast twitch recruitment and making sure you can move your legs tired. If you're a person who's, slower cadence and you do those, you almost immediately, we do some, like, again, right now we're in a movement phase. So we're doing maybe low RPM or high RPM work. Most athletes, comment, yeah, I would naturally, have a cadence of, 65 or 70, but after I did these high cadence, reps, when I went to the rest break or the cool down, I naturally went back to higher cadence. Right. Same thing with the running, right? Because that's how you teach, right? And same thing with, with the running, strides, butt kicks, high knees, or just focusing, on tilting your hip forward. That's just it's a huge deal, right? And that's why, I had to, why don't we do these before the run? Because if you do them before the run, after 2 minutes, you're going to forget. It's done. You're going to do awesome the first 2 minutes, and then you're telling me after 35 you're going to remember what you're supposed to be doing? Nope. So I'm going to put little reminders here. Now, will they be that way, the entire year? No. But it's great to include things like that to make sure you're moving, right? To be present and to be aware, not to move mindlessly, because you do. Like you can look across all sports, right? People that look like they just put so much effort into what they do. And the thing you got to remember is you're just seeing the race. Think about how much more effort this athlete has to put forth because their mechanics are shitty through training, because it's higher stress. And so you can make a decision, or you can think, about how I want to, because, regardless of what your ideal pace and speed is, it's dependent on your ability to go fast at the end. One of my favorite Joe Filio quotes about, the obsession of age group athletes for track workouts is none of it matters if you can't sprint the last 100 meters. Because that's, that's why I always find it funny when people like cross the finish line, like, yeah, that so-and-so wanted it more. Like, didn't they both wanted it? One of them is just fitter than the other, right? Or could hold form longer than the other. And so when you look at yourself, when you look at your history, right, of especially with the obsession of long course racing, but even if it's sprint Olympic, right, you run out to do a 5K, it's form and efficiency, because guess what? It's not, you're more than likely, if you're in really, really great shape for a sprint or Olympic, a 5K, a 10K, you're not going to break down, right? Aerobically. Right, you might have to slow down some because you've tapped out, your heart rate's too high, you started out too fast, you built up too much lactic acid. Yeah, you might have to slow down for that. But most of the time, if you're moving really efficiency, you can see a guy. He looks like he's fighting it, right? They always commentate on that. The last couple miles of the World Championships and 70.3s and full is like, I don't know, they're starting to lean a little. Not because they didn't do enough running, because their form's falling to shit because they're tired, right? So the longer you can hold form in all things, right, the better. One of our very first How to Not Suck at Swimming podcasts, about arm fitness and swim fitness when it comes to swimming. Michael Jordan, he shoots a jumper to win the game and it falls short. Did he forget how to shoot? Nope. His legs are tired. He probably didn't jump enough. Right. Tiger Woods, on the 17th hole of the Masters, he leaves his putt short. Probably tired. Right. They don't forget how to swing. They don't forget how to shoot. You just get tired. And when you get tired, your mechanics fail. And yes, you need fitness, but you also need mechanics, right? You need both. You need fitness and mechanics, mainly because the better mechanics you have, the longer your fitness holds, right? Until you get to the point to where both have degraded. That's like the place where you start to bleed the most time. Once your mechanics and your fitness have both degraded to, a specific point, well, then you can no longer hold form, and then you can no longer move at a speed that's great enough to continue on the pace you were doing. Yeah. And that's when things start to really, really, really fall apart. So think about that, like in your own training this year. Am I spending time running terribly? And I'm not advocating to rechange your entire run form. I'm not advocating that at all. I'm not trying to change you from a 4-foot to a mid-foot to a 4-foot. It's like about awareness and how to move better in general. I could care less what, and the athletes know this that I work with. Like, I could care less if you land 4-foot, mid-foot, heel. It doesn't matter. None of it. They showed a replay of the 2000 Olympic, or maybe 2001 or 2021 Olympic trials in Atlanta, of all the people trying to make the marathon qualifications, and it was split like 33, 33, 33, 4-foot, mid-foot, heel foot, or heel striker. It doesn't matter. Just imagine how efficient you are over the period of time with your whole body of mechanics, because your mechanics of your upper body are what dictate where you land. And so, again, I think it's it might not be fun, right? Because it's not exciting. You're not going to get a lot of likes and loves on your Strava feed for your strides, right? Or your butt kicks or your paddle work in the pool, which is another reason why I include it during the main set, because I know if I don't, then you're probably not going to do them. But it's just this little things, I think, when you think about the phase of training that you're in, to think about moving better, right? And if I get to the end of this 60-minute run and I'm at 45 or 50 minutes, and you talk about this a lot, right? Is I want to finish feeling like I gained energy. Well, if you go too long, right, and you're eating, and you obviously have to go a certain intensity and a certain length of time to get a benefit from training, right? The goal is to tear down to an extent. If you don't ask your body to do more, it won't respond, it won't adapt. To do it bigger, to do it faster and longer the next time. So you have to do that to an extent, but do that appropriately, right? As you add load and add distance or add time and intensity. But if you get to that, 45, 50-minute part of your run, you're like, man, I really feel like I'm starting to, my form's starting to fall. Then what do you get out the last 10 minutes of suffering through with shitty form, besides waking up the next morning with your legs destroyed and a niggle had popped up, and now you have to deal with that, and you're more than likely to get up and run again the next day, imbalanced, and create more. Right? So when you talk about leaving a workout energized, not all of them, because some are supposed to be demanding, but when you talk about leaving a workout energized, it should also be, yes, it should make you feel good to work out, but also because your energy was able to sustain the length and the time, the demand of the workout, while holding the correct form, or having good economy over the period of it. So I know it's a lot to think about, and it's not sexy, but it's so important, especially, again, no matter what you're doing, 5K all the way up to, marathons, sprints all the way up to fulls. How you move matters.
Yeah. And I think you got to experiment, right? You got to be conscious of what you're doing. And like, it also really depends on where you're at fitness wise, because if you need a little more break in the pool, take it. Because like you just said, I mean, if you're going to just keep grinding home bad form, that's not a good option either. If you look at, I always marvel actually at the idea that if you look at the swim stroke, the bike stroke, and the run form, how much similarities there really is in between those. And it's just kind of the same movement in a lot of ways to me. It's basically a lot, you talk about getting a good feel in the water. I always feel like I have a fairly good feel on the bike, and then if I haven't ridden in a while, I kind of feel clunky or whatever. But I think a lot of that comes back to the fact that I used to bike a lot when I was younger. You used to swim a lot when you were younger. You've already gone through these form things and the repetitive nature. It's kind of built into your system. And the same with like runners. I'm sure most good runners out in triathlon probably had some cross country experience or track work or, track team stuff back when they're younger. And I think that's the battle a lot of us, sort of adult triathletes face, is that we're playing that catch up game. So in my opinion, and I think you agree with this, is sort of like, rather than overhauling everything and changing everything, it's just find the most efficiency within, a stroke that feels good to you, whether that's a heel stroke or a midfoot or, you know what I mean? Like, I want to get faster. I need to be, 4-foot stroker or lander or whatever. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in all these types of things when there's room to move around with what we have and be more efficient. And like you said, just find the way to move within what you have and make it feel comfortable. Like I wouldn't consider myself a great runner by any means, but there's certain times when I'm out there and I feel like, oh, there's something right here. I don't know exactly what it is, but I don't feel like I changed anything, but I have a really good balance. It feels easy. And I always like think about that while it's happening, and I try to keep that down or keep it going. And even like sometimes if it starts to fade, what I'll do is I'll just stop and I'll walk for like 30 seconds or a minute. It's amazing what kind of little, recharge you can get from a break. I talk about in-race recovery a lot sometimes, and it's one of those things that just makes me marvel. It's like if you just keep trying to do repeats in the pool on 10 seconds rest or something, you might go to hell in a handbasket real quick. But if you take 20 seconds and just keep, drilling that same good feeling you have back in there, that's when you start, I think, gaining stuff. And I just really think about that, man. You talk about like running at the end of an Ironman, that's why I'm big on this high turnover thing with my running, because like you're saying, if you get better at it and your muscles are like, okay, we're going to do this, and you get stronger at holding that turnover, that makes you faster. I mean, it just makes sense. Like the same with the bike, I always say, like, everybody wants to say, how do I get faster? And I'm like, well, ideally you want to be able to push the biggest gear you can comfortably with a little bit of a higher cadence. I mean, that just makes sense that you're going to go faster. So you have to be strong enough to hold that and everything like that. So that's why when I'm on a treadmill or whatever, I'll kind of have that. And then if I feel it fading, I'll just stop and I'll walk a little bit, and then I'll try and get it right back and just build it up slowly and keep grinding it in, because I think we just struggle a lot of times because we're really trying to learn late in life, and it's later in life. And a lot of times it's not easy. Certain things, are better taught young, or most things, I guess, so rather than overhaul everything, I think it's just a good idea to kind of find what works best for you and get real good at it and do it efficiently.
Be great at what you're good at, already good at, and not never reinvent the wheel, right? Like, and we can close it out here, but going back to the very first thing we talked about on this podcast, right? You getting to work in January. You didn't shoot for the moon.
Mm-mm.
Hell, you probably just shot for the second floor. Yeah. But
sometimes
that's because you know who you are, right? And you know that if your only chance to sustain, second, third, fourth, maybe get to the, top of the high rise by March or April, that's your only way to get there. But if you shoot for the moon, you might end up in the basement because you're going to get so dejected. And so it's a great example, obviously, away from, the actual movement, physical patterns that we make is the same thing. Is just, know your strengths and maximize them. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. If you're a person that loves coffee and doesn't want to give it up, then don't choose to not have it, right? Just because this diet says, well, you can't have coffee for 3 weeks under a detox. Fuck that. Like, no one should give up coffee, period. But just like know who you are, because then what happens is you're going to have 19 pots of coffee, right? It's like, again, going back to like New Year's resolutions, I heard a fascinating stat last week that the third Friday or Saturday in February every year is the highest sales day in fast food and the lowest attendance day at the gym.
Oh yeah, the third.
I think it was something like that. Don't quote me on the exact day, but it's a day in February. I think it's just past Valentine's, where it is the lowest attended day at the gym for the whole entire year, and the highest fast food sales. And it's no coincidence, right, that it comes 5 or 6 weeks after very, 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 very overinflated, overly optimistic, overcommitted, ridiculous goals that are impossible to keep, right? So don't try to reinvent the wheel in any way, shape, or form, right? Same thing goes with swimming and cycling and running. Be the best version of yourself, not Joe Schmo down the street who foot strikes, then call us in 6 weeks with a stress fracture, right? Or so-and-so that you saw in the Tour de France TT time trial on stage 20 who had this bent over position with the super closed hip angle that had a super flat back, and you go get a bike fit, you're like, this is what I want. And now you wonder why you've got, hip flexor issues because they did that for one day for 30 minutes. You're trying to do it for 6 hours. Try to improve what you already know how to improve, right? And just keep inching your way forward and focus on some of those, again, some of those smaller details that matter. And speaking of matters, you guys matter. And we appreciate you. We don't have any slang terminology for you today, but we will later this week. I will look up in the Urban Dictionary a new word. It seems to be one of the more fun. All other triathlon podcasts do name this 70.3 winner from South Africa at the, Ireland 70.3 race. No, we're dropping in drip. We're dropping in fun things like that. What was the other one we used? It was drip and what was last week? Bussin'. That's right. That's been a real popular one. Bussin'. But yeah, we'll pop one of those in there because really it's all about having fun, being happy, staying healthy. And again, as the topic of the day with movement, it's about staying healthy, right? Because guess what? The healthier you are, the happier you are. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. We talked at the beginning of the podcast about ways for you to support us through gear, through camps. But if you're looking for support yourself outside of the podcast, check out our coaching tab or inquire generally about race training plans this year if you're not interested in custom coaching, and click on that tab and figure out what's best for you. As always, you can get a hold of Mike, CrushingIron@gmail.com. And if you need anything from me specifically, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man. Respect the drip.
Respect the drip. See you, dude.
See ya.